I'm here at MagFest with game designer Rob Shields. Thank you for speaking with me.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start by asking, is there a game of yours here you're most proud of and why?
Okay, so I only have one game here. It's my game Neon Wasteland, and I guess I'm most proud of it just because it's the first game of its kind. It's a multimedia game that is a comic book and a video game, and they're both augmented reality, or they have augmented reality aspects to them. So if you have a smart device like a phone or a tablet, you can view both the comic and the game through the lens of your smart device, and will actually unlock animations and secrets within the game and within the comic. And they both work together to tell the storyline. The game itself is like an arcade action game, so it's not really heavy on story. There's a visual story element, but I don't do a lot of writing for it. I keep all the writing in the comic.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the technical side of what you did, was that you worked on all of that? Or?
I've done everything except for the music, which I use. I hire different people from different places to do the music for me, just so I can get the best music that I want to have. And then also, for the augmented reality aspect, I am using open source code that's freely available on the internet. I'm just building an application using that. So I haven't developed it from scratch. I'm using something else, but I'm building the app myself.
Okay. How did you know when this game was finished?
So it's not actually finished yet. It's still a prototype. For me, I'm trying to release it in episodes, so it's not going to be a very full 20-hour game. It's going to be 3 to 5 hours. And I think I'm going to know it's finished when I understand what the game's going to be. I have a few different styles of gameplay, and I'm just trying to play test them with people at events like this, which is what these are awesome for. Mm-hmm. And once I see that people can not have bugs in the game, then I know it's ready to go and ready to launch it.
Okay. And how long have you been play testing it?
This version of the game is just being play tested right now, but I've been play testing different versions of the game since last summer, so for about 6 months now. And the thing is, there are different styles of gameplay within the game, so I have to play test each individual ones. And I'm getting close to that point where I know exactly which ones I want and how they're going to work. It's definitely a slow process because of the multiple styles of gameplay. Normally a game only has one style, but I want to make sure that I'm not just doing a gimmick of here's a whole bunch of different styles of gameplay and they're all kind of mediocre. I want them all to be fully fleshed out and to be really fun and addictive, and then they'll work together. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Are you going to self-publish or get
right now,
company?
I'm talking to a publisher about publishing the comic book, so I might also publish the game with them. I'm not sure. I can't really say anything yet because I don't know if it's official. But yeah, if I don't get a publisher, I'm also thinking about doing a Kickstarter to raise funds for it. Which, if I do a Kickstarter, I think I might be doing a Kickstarter anyway, even if I get a publisher, because that's one of my things that I want to put into I'm trying to say, in my contract, I want to be able to still be able to self-publish. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be doing a Kickstarter in the springtime, this spring, April, mm-hmm. for the project.
What inspires you?
So I'm inspired by Japanese cyberpunk from the 1980s. So that was sort of like an update of Ridley Scott's movie Blade Runner, but injected with glam punk and animation. Movies like Akira or cartoons like Bubblegum Crisis are the bread and butter for me of my inspiration. So it's very this updated version of the dystopian cyberpunk future, but it's more punk. So for me, it's the punk comes first and the cyber comes second, because I want it to be more about that and the excess of the 80s and more the late 80s. So the color palettes and the things like that is what really drives my visual style.
Okay. What is your most important designing tool? Is there something special you need in your workspace?
So for me, I use a Cintiq to draw. So, but I mean, I guess that's probably the number one physical tool that I use, because everything that I do is hand drawn and hand animated. So without that, I'd have to do it with paper and then scan it into the computer, which I could do, but it just adds a little bit more time. So that's what I would say is my most used physical tool would be the Cintiq. But for me, when creating the story overall, or when creating this project overall, the number one thing that I use in terms of developing everything is character development. So my story and my game all started off as developing the characters, and now I sort of use them to help me push the project forward. So I don't really like, I kind of know where the story's going to go, but mostly I just take my characters and I throw them into bad situations and I see how they're going to act, and that informs not only my art style and the storyline, but also how the gameplay is going to work out.
Okay. Is there an element of game design you enjoy working with most, and why?
An element of game design. I think for me, I really like storytelling in games. So, I mean, I love gameplay. I want to make addictive gameplay, and I do action games. So it's more about like fast-paced action. But overall, to me, video games is a storytelling medium. So I think that is the best and most exciting thing. Like when I create something and it feels cinematic, that's when I get really excited and when I'm really proud of something that I've made. I really like making satisfying gameplay as well, so I try to blend those two together. But I think my favorite part is like the cinematics and getting it to feel very cinematic.
How did you start making games, and why do you make games?
So I got hired by a small indie company to do war games with them. So that was the first time that I ever developed games. And at that time I was just a concept artist, and they taught me how to use Unity, which is now what I use to build my games. So that's how I got started doing it. And what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
Oh, and why do you make games?
Oh, why do I make games? I make games probably because as a kid I always wanted to make games, and I remember designing a Mega Man game back in like the 80s when I used to play Mega Man and being like, I wish I could make this game. And now as an adult, it's like I can make the game, so I kind of have to. It's kind of like the fact that it's there, and the fact that the internet exists and it can just teach you anything you want to learn. It just makes it too irresistible to not be like, okay, I'm going to learn this and I'm going to do it. And yeah, just seeing something that you've designed come to life like that is really awesome. I think it's like the closest thing to being a filmmaker is to build a video game, because you can still have characters and you can still have moments where there's like dialogue and plot points and storyline that can go, and you don't have to hire actors or things like that. I mean, maybe you have to hire voice actors at some point,
right.
Which I have hired my first voice actress for my main character, so that's like I'm getting closer to that. But yeah, I think to me it's like the closest step next to like becoming a film director. But video games I think are even better because you get to give the control of like the main character to the audience, which you don't have in a movie.
Right. Okay. Okay, this is your first game, but how did your first game success change the way you design games? As in, was there a point during your progression that you said, wow, this is the way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see people playing the games that you've made, it like clicks at a certain point when you've made something that's successful or where you've made a mistake. So I've definitely I think going to conventions like this is the best way to get that kind of feedback from people, because you actually see them play the game and it just makes sense. Like when you see someone connect with a game and they don't want to put it down, or their parents drag them away sometimes when it's little kids, because usually parents are like, come on, we gotta go. It's like, this show's for me, not for you. So those are the moments where you're like, okay, something's going right with this. So yeah, I think just having that feedback's been invaluable.
Okay. What role do games or the game designer have in society?
So I think the role of a game designer is becoming more and more prevalent. It's getting more into the point of being able to tell a story. Like video games are becoming less about the technical aspect of how do I build a game, and it has a more artistic side to it of like, what do I want to talk about and how do I want to express myself. So I think games are a great way to reach especially young people and try to project sort of like concerns that we have about society or things like that, so we can sort of carry a message to them that is positive, and hopefully like messages that we received, or at least for me, I'm like a kid from the 80s, so I received a lot of messages through cartoons in the 80s, and they had like really positive messages, and like Fables used to have the same thing, like or even like the Bible has like positive messages, right? So it's like it's a newer form of that, where you can give people positive messages that they can grow up with and that they can build into the fabric of like their own morality. And I think games, even though that seems like really like almost abstract and too like high plane for like video games, I think that aspect is becoming more part of games, where we can project a more idealized version of our society, or if we see like cracks in the veneer of our society, we can say that's not cool, like we shouldn't have that. And I'm trying to do stuff like that with my game too. I want to have protagonists that are not like stereotypical people that you would think of even in a cyberpunk story, it's usually like a disgruntled detective who's disillusioned. My character is not like that at all. She's like a young kid who's really idealistic, and the world around her is very like not idealistic. It's like a real world where it's very corrupted, and she is still idealistic despite that. So it's like trying to see like how does she deal with this constant onslaught and still be a positive person, because she's like a matriarch for her clan of people. She's the leader of her gang, and some of these kids are really young, and they're also live in this really terrible world that's like really against them, and she's trying to keep them together and give them hope. So that's like a really positive message that I'm trying to project through my game, even on like a very like subtext level. Like I'm not trying to be in your face to be like, don't vote for Donald Trump, even though like don't vote for Donald Trump is like totally what I believe in. I'm not gonna ever say that, but like that's like the subtext is like these people are not people that would have voted for Donald Trump.
Right. No, I got
Sorry,
it.
I don't want to be too political because I don't like that, but yeah.
Right. Okay. What movies, books, games, or other creative media in science fiction or fantasy have inspired you? And you mentioned some already. But
Yeah, I think Akira is probably the number one because it started off as a manga in 1982 and then it became a film in 1986, and it's probably one of the biggest sources of inspiration for me because I'm building a video game. I mean, I'm building a comic book that's animated, so I would love for it to be like an animated feature at some point. So that's sort of, I would say, my number one inspiration.
is there a game you want to create and haven't done so yet? And what is it?
Yeah, I really want to do, like right now I'm building a racing game and a Metroidvania game, so those are two really big games that I want to build, but another game that I really want to build is like a top-down Zelda-style game, so like a action RPG style game would be my next thing to do, but I just can't do it all at once, so
Right, yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have. Any final thoughts?
If you'd like to check out my game, you can check me out on neonwastelandgame.com. I'm also on Patreon, patreon.com/neonwasteland. But definitely go check out the site. You can see some of the comic book. You can see some screenshots of the game. You can see what it's all about. It's really exciting. It's like a Neo 80s cyberpunk style game, but there's also going to be elements as it progresses of things like Frank Herbert's Dune or Mad Max. So it has like this blend of things. There's also like a Walking Dead style element. It takes a lot of genres and pushes them together. And for me, all that stuff is just the backdrop of telling the story of the characters, which is the biggest part. So yeah, definitely check that out.
So you said Eon Wasteland?
Neon.
Neon. Okay.
Neon Wasteland.
N-E-O-N
Yes.
Wasteland.
Yep.
Okay.
Neonwastelandgame.com is the site.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. I'm here at MagFest with game designer Rob Shields. Thank you for speaking with me.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'd like to start by asking, is there a game of yours here you're most proud of and why?
So I have my game here, Neon Wasteland, and it's my latest game, and I think it's the game that I'm most proud of. It's an action racing game and a 2D Metroidvania side-scrolling game in one. It's also a augmented reality comic book, so if you have a smart device like a phone or a tablet and you look at the comic through that device, you can unlock animation. The game itself, the comic itself is fully animated, and there's also augmented reality aspects of the game, so you can unlock secrets through the game using the similar augmented reality device like that.
So how do you know when a game is finished?
For me, a game is finished when you come to the show like this, like MagFest, and you have a playtest with people, and you can see that they get addicted to the game and that they don't want to go away and don't want to stop playing it. A lot of times I'll see like kids start playing the game and their parents are like, "Come on, we gotta go," or people will play the game and they're obsessed with finishing the level. So usually when I see that reaction from people, that's when I know that the game's ready to go.
What inspires you?
So my art and my game design are inspired by 1980s Japanese cyberpunk, which are movies like Akira or shows like Bubblegum Crisis. I'm also inspired by things from the 80s, 90s, graffiti, video games, comic books, and all that kind of stuff.
Please visit chrisalvarez.com for more cool stuff. That's CRISALVAREZ.com. Thanks for listening and keep imagining the future.